The first light of dawn broke across the northern forest, painting the snow with pale pink and gold. The storm had passed, leaving a silence that pressed against the ruins of the ancient temple like a held breath. Kale remained crouched beside Arendor, eyes sharp, muscles tense. The Alpha's shivering had lessened, but the remnants of the curse still pulsed in his body, dark and dangerous, threatening to rise again. Arendor's golden eyes opened fully, clearer than before. There was a calm within them now, but beneath it lay a shadow of the beast that had roared in the night. Kale felt a mixture of relief and unease. The Alpha's control had returned, but only barely. Every heartbeat reminded Kale that the danger was far from over. You. Arendor's voice was hoarse yet steady. You stayed. Even when I could have killed you in my rage. Kyle looked away, gripping his hands around his knees. I stayed because you needed me, not because of who you are, or who you think you are. His voice carried a quiet defiance, soft but unyielding. Arendor's lips curved in the faintest shadow of a smile. It was the first time Kale had seen even a hint of warmth in the Alpha's expression. And yet, I am grateful, perhaps more than I should be. The forest beyond the temple was awakening with life, the distant cries of normal wolves mixing with the whispering winds. Kale felt the weight of the world pressing down upon him. He realized something profound. In carrying the Alpha through the storm, he had not only saved a life, he had set in motion a destiny neither of them could yet understand. Slowly, Arendor pushed himself up, leaning on Kale's shoulder for support. Kyle's heart thumped against his ribs, an unfamiliar mixture of fear and tenderness. The Alpha's strength was undeniable, even weakened by the curse, yet in this moment he was fragile, human in a way few had ever seen. You will walk with me, Arendor said, voice firm, pulling Kale from his thoughts. Back to the kingdom. There is much to do, and the world will not wait for weakness. Kale hesitated, torn between the safety of solitude and the strange, growing connection he felt toward Arendor. The kingdom, they will not accept me. I am an Omega, alone, cast out. Arendor's gaze softened, but his eyes retained their golden edge. Perhaps it is time they understand that strength is not measured only by title. You carried me through the storm. That is power greater than any crown. Together they stepped out into the forest, snow crunching beneath their feet, the cold bit at their skin. But the light of morning seemed to burn away the last traces of night's terror. Yet danger still lingered. Shadows moved at the edges of the trees, watchers drawn by the lingering energy of Arendor's partial shift. Kale's senses sharpened instinctively, every muscle prepared to react. As they approached the edge of the forest, a figure emerged, a rival Alpha from the southern packs, eyes gleaming with malice. He had heard of Arendor's weakened state and came seeking conquest. The forest tensed with anticipation, the air thick with the scent of challenge. You are foolish, Alpha, the rival sneered. Even with this Omega, you are weak. Step aside, and perhaps your kingdom will remain intact. Arendor straightened, golden eyes blazing, the last of the curse's fury simmering beneath his skin. I am not weak, he said, voice like steel. And he is no mere Omega. He is my equal in courage, in heart, and in purpose. Kale felt heat rise in his chest at Arendor's words. The Alpha's acknowledgement of him in front of all was more than respect. It was acceptance. And in that acceptance, a bond deeper than loyalty or fear began to bloom. The rival Alpha lunged, teeth bared. But Arendor shifted smoothly, a controlled yet commanding transformation. Fur rippled across his body, golden eyes now fully glowing, claws ready. Kale's heart raced, but he did not move away. He had carried this man through the storm, and now he would stand beside him through fire and shadow alike. Together they fought, not as master and servant, but as equals. Kale's own instincts, sharpened by years of survival, combined with Arendor's strength and control, forming a rhythm that surprised even them. Every blow, every dodge was a dance of trust, each movement a testament to the bond forged in the storm. When the rival fell back, defeated but not destroyed, Arendor approached Kale, his golden eyes searching. You are remarkable, he said, almost in awe. I have underestimated you, and perhaps all Alphas have. You are more than a survivor, you are a partner in the truest sense. Kale's gray eyes met his, steady and unwavering. Then we walk forward together. Whatever comes next. The walk back to the kingdom was long and quiet. Arendor did not speak much, and Kale did not need to ask why. The silence was comfortable, filled with the weight of understanding, of shared history, of unspoken emotion. Each knew the other had changed, forever. Upon reaching the kingdom, they were met with astonishment. Courtiers and guards whispered, eyes wide at the sight of the Alpha, restored yet changed, and the Omega who had carried him. The very air seemed to hum with anticipation. Rumors would spread, fear would stir, but for now, Arendor held his head high, and Cale walked at his side, not beneath, not behind, but as a partner recognized and unafraid. In the private halls of the castle, Arendor finally spoke, voice softer, almost vulnerable. The curse, it has not left me entirely, but it feels lighter, because of you. Your loyalty, your courage, it has begun to mend what I could not on my own. Cale's heart swelled. You don't have to do this alone anymore. Not ever. Arendor reached out, brushing a hand against Cale's, a gesture of connection and trust. It was the first real touch, gentle but affirming, bridging the gap between power and humility, fear and courage. Then we face the future together, he said, voice low, almost reverent. Days passed, and Arendor regained full control of his alpha form, the curse now a faint whisper rather than a roaring shadow. He moved with confidence, commanded the kingdom with justice, and yet in every decision he considered Cale, not as a servant, not as a subordinate, but as an equal, a partner, a bond that transcended title and power. Cale, too, found a place he had never known. No longer the outcast, the loner, he walked among the people of the kingdom with quiet strength. His presence beside Arendor was both protection and guidance, a living reminder that courage and heart could challenge even fate itself. But even as peace settled over the northern kingdom, shadows remained. Whispers of old curses lingered in hidden corners. Ancient forces, older than the Alpha line itself, stirred. Cale and Arendor had faced the storm and emerged stronger, but the future held trials beyond their imagining. The storm had passed, but the winds of destiny were far from calm. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in molten gold and crimson, Cale and Arendor stood on the castle's highest tower. The wind tugged at their cloaks, carrying the scent of snow and pine. They did not speak. They did not need to. Finally, Arendor broke the silence, voice soft but filled with resolve. Whatever comes, we face it together. Nothing can undo what we have built. Not curses, not enemies, not fear. Cale nodded, feeling the truth of those words in his bones. Together, he echoed. The night deepened, stars glittering like shards of ice. Somewhere beyond the horizon, a shadow moved, ancient and watchful, hinting at trials yet to come. But Cale and Arendor, bound by storm and sacrifice, by courage and heart, stood ready. They had survived the night. They had survived the storm. And by morning, the Alpha King had risen, not just in power, but in spirit, with the lone Omega at his side. For the first time, the Northern Kingdom saw not just a king, but a bond that could endure darkness itself. And in that quiet, unbreakable trust, the legend of Cale and Arendor began. End of Part 2. Cliffhanger for future potential. Though the Alpha King has fully risen and the curse weakened, shadows stir beyond the kingdom, hinting at trials and enemies yet unseen. Cale and Arendor's bond is their greatest strength, but the storm of fate is far from over. The wind tore across the northern forest like a living thing, carrying with it the scent of snow, pine, and something darker. The sky above was a furious gray, splitting with jagged bolts of lightning that illuminated the twisted shapes of trees, their branches clawing at the air. Amid the chaos, Cale moved carefully, each step leaving a shallow print in the frost. He was alone, as he always had been, the bitter weight of solitude pressing against his chest. Cale was an Omega, the lowest of the wolf shifters, a title that had followed him since his exile from his own pack. His gray eyes flickered with cautious fire as he navigated the forest, listening to the distant echoes of movement. Something unnatural, something dangerous. He had survived storms before, had faced hunters and rival packs, but tonight was different. Tonight, the world seemed to rage with a hunger that even Cale could not ignore. Then he saw him. Arendor, the Alpha King, lay collapsed near the edge of a frozen stream, his golden eyes half closed, blood staining the snow beneath him. Cale's breath caught in his throat. The Alpha was a figure of legend, feared and respected across the northern kingdoms. To see him like this, vulnerable, wounded, and alone, was almost impossible. Kale's instincts screamed at him to stay hidden, to let the mighty Alpha fall. Yet another voice, softer and stranger, whispered that he could not leave him. The first crash of lightning struck close, illuminating Arendor's face fully. Despite the blood and frost, there was an undeniable strength etched into his features, a raw command even in weakness. Kyle's own heartbeat thrummed against his ribs, a mix of fear and awe. Slowly he approached, crouching beside the wounded Alpha. "Stay still," Kale murmured, his voice low and steady. "I won't let them take you." Arendor stirred, a faint growl escaping his lips. "Why? Why would you care for an Alpha?" he rasped, pain and disbelief mingling in his voice. Kyle's gray eyes met the golden ones, unwavering. "Because no one deserves to die alone, even kings." Lightning split the sky again, and a low howl rose from the shadows. Wolves, but twisted, unnatural. The forest trembled as they advanced, their forms larger, more savage than ordinary wolves. Kyle clenched his jaw. There was no time. With an effort he did not know he still possessed, Kyle lifted Arendor into his arms. The Alpha's body was heavy, but Kale's resolve made him strong. He moved quickly, leaping over fallen branches and slick ice, the storm battering him with every step. His muscles burned, his breath came in ragged gasps, but he refused to falter. "You shouldn't be doing this," Arendor whispered, his voice weak but sharp, cutting through the roar of the wind. "I don't have a choice," Kale replied, his teeth gritted. "You're not just an Alpha, you're a man." Arendor's eyes narrowed. Pride, pain, and something unspoken flickered in them. He did not trust, nor had he ever. Yet in this moment, when death seemed so near, he allowed himself to be carried, to be dependent. Hours passed in a blur of wind, snow, and peril. The forest seemed endless, each step a battle against the storm and the dark wolves that pursued them. Kale's mind drifted in fragments, memories of the pack that had cast him out, of nights spent alone, cold and hungry. And yet, in carrying the Alpha, in risking himself for another, he felt a strange warmth blooming inside him. At last, Kale found shelter in the ruins of an ancient temple, half buried in snow. The walls were cracked, the roof mostly gone, but it offered some protection from the storm. He laid Arendor on the cold stone floor, his hands shaking as he examined the wounds. Blood had frozen in places, and bruises marked the Alpha's skin like dark jewels. "You're lucky to be alive," Kale muttered, though part of him wondered if luck had little to do with it. Arendor's golden eyes followed him, calculating, wary. "Why? Do you help me?" he asked again, softer this time. Pain and curiosity mixed together, forming a fragile bridge between them. Kale crouched beside him, searching for torn flesh and frostbite. "Because no one else would," he said finally. "Because you need someone, even if you don't realize it yet." For a moment, silence fell, broken only by the wind outside. Kale noticed how fragile Arendor looked, how human beneath the veneer of power and fear. He noticed how the Alpha's chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, how the storm had not yet claimed him. Something in Kale's chest tightened, something dangerous, something like hope. Hours passed, and Arendor shifted slightly, wincing in pain. Kale reached out instinctively, brushing a strand of wet hair from his face. Arendor flinched, then relaxed ever so slightly. The gesture was small, simple, yet it carried weight neither of them could speak aloud. Night fell fully, darker than the storm itself, and the forest seemed alive with eyes. Kale kept watch, crouched beside the Alpha, alert to every whisper of movement. Every so often, Arendor murmured, half-coherent words of warning, of command, of frustration with his own weakness. And each time Kale reminded him quietly, he was safe here, if only for a little while. As the night deepened, the wind began to die down. The storm's fury softened, leaving an eerie, hollow calm. Kale allowed himself a brief moment to rest. Leaning back against the cold stone, his head full of thoughts he did not want to name. Then it happened. Arendor's body shuddered violently, golden eyes snapping open. A low, guttural growl rolled from his chest, unnatural and terrifying. Cale froze, his heart hammering. The Alpha was shifting, not fully, but enough to show the curse that had plagued him for centuries. Dark energy rippled across his fur, eyes glinting with wild, uncontrolled power. Cale... Arendor's voice was both his and something else, something older, fiercer. "Get back." "I won't leave you," Cale said, stepping closer despite the danger. His own pulse raced, knowing he could be torn apart by the very man he had saved. "You're stronger than this. You can fight it." The Alpha roared, the sound shaking the ruined temple, echoing through the forest. Shadows seemed to crawl along the walls, responding to the power that surged in Arendor. Cale's courage faltered for the briefest instant, but he held his ground. He would not abandon him now. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the monstrous side of the man he had carried through the storm. It was terrifying, awe-inspiring, and in some impossible way, beautiful. Cale's gray eyes met the golden ones, and in that moment he understood. This was no longer a simple act of mercy. This was a test of heart, of loyalty, of love in its rawest, most dangerous form. The night stretched on, the curse raging within Arendor, and Cale's resolve hardened. He would face the storm within and without, for the Alpha who had never known mercy, and the Omega who had never known trust. As the first hint of dawn touched the horizon, a soft pink against the battered sky, Cale knew one thing with certainty. The world would never be the same after tonight. And neither would he. But even as he steadied himself, the shadows whispered from beyond the walls of the ruined temple. Dark wolves stirred, waiting for weakness, waiting for the moment Cale faltered. Cale tightened his grip, his teeth set, and whispered to himself and to the Alpha beside him, "Come what may, I will not let you fall." The storm had passed, but the true danger, the one that would test heart, courage, and destiny, was only beginning.